Did KU find their backup big man in Pat Suemnick, a transfer from Oklahoma State and West Virginia?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the action. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're talking about Pat Suemnick. He is a transfer who maybe would fill the backup big man role for KU. He's an experienced Big 12 player. He just visited KU, so we're going to break down what he would bring to the table, how he would fit in with KU, as well as some of the latest news in the portal. And KU baseball still trying to end their skid in Big 12 play. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No consoles needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Okay, so Pat Suemnick visited Kansas, this according to, I believe, Jayhawks Slant, from earlier this week. He is a big man transfer who began his career out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, went to Robert Morris, and that was in the 2020 to 2021 season there. So that would be the COVID year, or I guess the year where your eligibility didn't count, I guess, because of it being the year after COVID and stuff. And, as a young player, 16 games played as a true freshman, 2.5 points, 1.5 rebounds per game, 59% from the floor. Then in his second year of collegiate ball, he goes to JUCO and goes to Triton College in Illinois. Team goes 30-6. He ends up being a first-team junior college All-American during his second season. So, great. Then he transfers up because of how good he was that year to all the way the Power 5 level with West Virginia, whereas at that point he's a third-year player. But now looking back on it, where the JUCO year doesn't count or the COVID year doesn't count, he's really a third-year freshman that year at West Virginia. 21 games played, 1.4 points per game, 1.3 rebounds per game as kind of a reserve big man, and 5.7 points per game. Those numbers go up in his second year with West Virginia, his fourth overall of college, and that was in 2023 to 2024. He actually started 6 games, played in 32 of them, played 14 minutes per game. So, those are serviceable backup big minutes, right? I mean, we've seen some bigs for KU as the backup play 8 minutes per game. We've seen other play closer to 15. With Suemnick, the 14 there. That was really his best season, his final year at West Virginia. Averaged 4.1 points, 2.6 rebounds per game, 0.3 blocks, 0.3 steals per game on 54% from the floor and 60% at the foul line. But then he decides to transfer again this past season, stays in the Big 12, winds up at Oklahoma State, where he plays 34 games, about 12 minutes per game, about 3 points per game, 2 rebounds, 0.3 assists, 0.4 steals, 0.2 blocks, and he does it shooting 52% from the floor. Effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage a little bit lower than most big men would be necessarily, but this is an experienced player at the power level and at the Big 12 level. And because of the fact that, again, he had the COVID year, Robert Morris, and the JUCO year, that allows him to have that extra year of play. So even though he's played, 5 seasons of college basketball, 4 at the Division I level, because 2 of them don't count, he'll be able to be a 6th-year senior this upcoming season. That's why he has eligibility in there. But the strengths to Suemnick's game, he gets the free throw line at a good rate, and I think part of that is his physicality. I mean, he's not the tallest guy in the world, 6'8", 225 pounds. He's built well enough. He does have decent strength and stuff, and he is able to use some power to get to the free throw line. He had a 91st percentile free throw attempt rate last year. The year before, West Virginia, he had an 85th percentile free throw attempt rate. So this is a guy who does a good job using that body to power through and get to the free throw line. He also uses that physicality to get putbacks on the offensive glass. He was in the 77th percentile in second chance points per 40 minutes this past season. And again, if we go back to the year before, his best year at West Virginia, he was in the 93rd percentile in Morgantown in the second chance points per 40 minutes. So a guy's going to get to the free throw line. He's going to get you stickbacks on the offensive glass. Also good at getting steals. I mean, 66th percentile steal rate for a big man. So like, that's a plus. It's not an elite number there, but it's a good number, right? That's something you like to see there. Obviously to get those offensive putbacks, you have to at least be a solid offensive rebounder to get there. This season, he was in the 50th percentile for offensive rebound rate. So that would just tell you he's dead average, but it's not a weakness. It's dead average. But the year before West Virginia, it was much better. 87th percentile in offensive rebound rate at West Virginia. Now, some of that could come schematically, like does one team want you, getting back on defense a little bit more? Does another team ask of you to, crash the glass a little bit more? But like it is in there that he can be a really good offensive rebounder. He's also a low usage player, and he's I get this comes from reports. Like this isn't something that like I can point to on a stat sheet and be like his teammate rating on ESPN is a 4.2. Like I don't know, but like scouting reports say that he is a good locker room presence. That's what people say, and that he's just overall like a good dude. And obviously he has plenty of experience in the Big 12. And so you combine that with maybe being like, I guess you could also say like a low ego player with being a low usage player out there. It's important to have some of those players as you build out your roster. It's important to have those from a, sacrificing for a team perspective, but also because, if you're Pat Suemnick and you come into Kansas and, if you're playing 14 minutes a game, if you're playing 8 minutes per game, you don't want somebody who's at as a rotational player or a bench player, or what happens if he does end up being somebody who isn't playing a gigantic role? Are they going to be a problem in the locker room? You don't want those guys who are on that fringe of are they going to be in the rotation or not to be that. You want them to be good team players and to lift up the locker room and still make impacts in practice and when they do get out on the floor. And by all accounts, it sounds like Suemnick is that guy. And that makes him kind of a perfect, role player for what you are kind of looking for here. The big questions here, he's not the best defensive rebounder. I wonder if that comes from, if we're the lack of height too, if you're talking about him playing the 5, at 6'8", 225, he's playing the 4. He has more than good enough size, but at 6'8", 225, he's playing the 5. He will be a little undersized. Now we did see Kansas, play guys like that at times. So I think Dwight Colby was like 6'9". Carlton Bragg was like 6'10" at times playing the 5, but didn't really want to be down there. Mitch Lightfoot was like 6'8" and probably less than 225 of what Suemnick is. So we've seen Kansas be able to get away with some of those guys. But yeah, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and he hasn't been a very good defensive rebounder. Only in the 14th percentile for defensive rebound rate this past season. So that's a bad number. That number is higher again if you look at his final number or his final season at West Virginia. It's even worse. 4th percentile in defensive rebound rate his final year at West Virginia. So 14th percentile defensive rebound rate this year, 4th percentile defensive rebound rate his last year at West Virginia. So that is something where it's like, if he's going to be on the floor, you would need your 4-man and your 3-man, like you would need other players to be good defensive rebounders out there if you are Kansas. Also, not much of an offensive game. I mean, he is more of a low usage player, so you're not asking him to post up and go with it. But, 41st percentile effective field goal percentage, only in the 8th percentile in free throw percentage, only in the 25th percentile in true shooting percentage. He was in the 37th percentile in the paint at the rim, and he only took 6 shots all season long outside of the paint. So not like a diverse offensive game. He was more efficient in these areas in his final year at West Virginia. And I think the reason is simple. At Oklahoma State, he played more 5 than 4, which I do think Kansas would be asking him more to do. But at West Virginia, he was playing more 4 than he was 5, though it was kind of close. And so I think at KU, you look at him being a 5. I guess I don't know that I would be wanting lineups where he would be next to Flory Bidunga, where he's the 4 and Flory is the 5, because there's just, that's two guys who I don't know. Did Flory take any shots outside of the paint this year without looking? I'm not sure I have the answer to that, but if it was probably single digits. And so it's not even like, okay, at least on this past year's Kansas team, when there was a lack of spacing with the 2 bigs, well, KJ could still at least shoot the floater from the mid-range, and Hunter could at least shoot the mid-range well and shoot the 3-point shot. if you're playing Suemnick next to Flory for certain lineups, neither guy's shooting out of the paint. So I would not love that idea, but I don't think that's the idea. I think the idea here would be get a guy who can be a backup big for you and be happy with his role and be a good team player. And from that perspective, I think there is some interest, but we'll get into that in the fit conversation here in a second. The other part of this, not much passing game either. 17th percentile assist rate, 23rd percentile assist to turnover rate. But again, he's going to be a low usage offensive player. Would more so be out there. You'd just be asking him to rebound and hold your own on the defensive end. So how exactly would he fit in with Kansas? Get to that next. Our episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Money, or you could split up the TVs, or you have the ability with the Fire TV Stick where if you're on the go, if you're traveling, it's a lot easier to bring a Fire TV Stick with you than it is to bring a console. And it's a great way to get into Xbox too without spending as big of a cost on a console. Maybe you don't even have a console and you're just like, should I get this? Should I not? Well, boom, you can give it a try. Or maybe you're just going to be hooked on it and you'll stay with this forever, right? It's great. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second generation Fire TV Stick 4K Max, the first and second generation, and the Fire TV Cube, third generation. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We'll have some more deep dives coming at you next week on the show, going over some guards that we think are kind of interesting as far as, we talk about what is still needed for KU at this point in time. They have 4 scholarships remaining. You try to get another stud player, whether it's a Darian Williams, Dame Sarr, RJ Lewis, Jameer Watkins, whoever. You try to get a backup big, which maybe that's Suemnick, right? You try to get maybe a more developmental player. And then the 4th edition, it could be another backup big. It could be somebody in that Diggy, Coit, Jalen Coleman, Lands role. So we're going to break down some guys that maybe would fit into that specific role, kind of a sniper, 3-point shooter, that 8th, 9th man, Diggy, Coit role off the bench on next week. Okay. How exactly would Pat Suemnick fit on this year's Kansas roster? First of all, what would he add to the team? I think he'd add more physicality to the team, right? I mean, this is a guy who would be a 6th-year player. He'd be an older player, and that's something he would add too, right? He would add experience. He would add, I don't know. It's nice to have guys who are seasoned and, I guess, mature both on and off the court, physically and mentally, right? Those are good things to be teammates with, right? But the physicality, he would add that a little bit to the team. I think low ego, end of bench possibilities, you add that to the team, and you need to add that to the team, right? Because you can't go out and get some center and be like, hey, I know you're expecting 30 minutes per game. Come over here. We'll make it work. And then all of a sudden they're playing 10 minutes a game and they're pissed. You don't want that situation. That's going to be bad for the locker room, right? So you don't have to worry about that with Suemnick. And then it would give you another big man who gives you, I think, more depth in the case of, okay, you need somebody to play the minutes Flory's on the bench. Maybe that's Bryson Tiller, but he's coming off the injury. So it gives you insurance in case of, Tiller. Gives you insurance in case 1 or 2 of those guys gets hurt or is in foul trouble. It gives you another, that's the other thing, without walk-ons now, you need big men who are going to be able to bang and provide good looks on the defensive end of the floor in practice, right? And that's where it comes into play too, where that would make sense. Now, what it wouldn't solve, it wouldn't overhaul your post scoring. It wouldn't give you more defensive rebounding. In fact, that would be something you would have to adjust to, the lack of defensive rebounding. It also wouldn't give you a ton of size off the bench. I mean, Tiller has a very long wingspan, so that would be helpful there. But again, kind of questions about, what's going on there with the injury and everything. But we've seen Kansas win a title where, again, Mitch Lightfoot was the backup big. So it is a possibility. But as far as how he'd fit in role-wise, I'll say this, if you did tell me Pat Suemnick ends up being the backup big man, I don't think it's disaster mode, but I do think the tough part is that, the Parker Brown role, there's that scale. I think I've talked about this before, Parker Brown to Mitch Lightfoot on the scale of backup big man who is behind a stud big man and is going to be limited in minutes, right? and how well can they play. And the last year, Mitch Lightfoot, like, he was very good. Like, he was blocking shots, he was getting rebounds. He had, again, I bring this up all the time, like his hook shot was like in the 90 something percentile for hook shots in college basketball that year. So like he was able to give you some proficient things. I don't think that I'd go that you would expect him to be that good in Suemnick, because I don't know that you have the at least that one go-to post move that Mitch Lightfoot had, and also Suemnick not as good of a shot blocker. Mitch wasn't the best defensive rebounder, but better rates than Suemnick had. But I also think it's more physicality and presence than what you had with Parker Brown. That maybe is a harder comparison because Brown was putting up bigger stats, but it was in Santa Clara, where Suemnick's been in the Big 12. And I think that physicality does matter. But also the difference there is Parker Brown was the backup to Hunter Dickinson, who was playing 30, 32 minutes a night, some games 35 minutes in a specific night. So it's a little bit less of a role. With Suemnick, yeah, it'd be great if Flory's playing 30 minutes a night, because that probably means he's been awesome and he's avoiding foul trouble. But I do think Flory is going to be more of the notion of a big man for Bill Self. You look at David McCormick or Udoka Azubuike's minute per game numbers, they're closer to the mid-20s, right? And so let's say Flory even gets you 28, that's a bigger role available than when Parker Brown had to back up Hunter Dickinson. Just to that notion, I don't know that I would love the fact of Suemnick giving you 12, 15 minutes per game. But I think in an ideal world, what happens is if you land Suemnick, Bryson Tiller comes back healthy, and Tiller's able to give you minutes the 5 and the 4 a little bit. You can play a little too big basketball. He can be the backup 5. And Suemnick is the kind of third string center at that point. And at that point, it'd be awesome. And you look at that, I forget the name of the kid, but Duke just brought in a big man from Rice who, if you looked at the, oh gosh, what is his name? I'm not even going to be able to pronounce this. Ifani Ufachukwu? I don't know if that's right. But anyway, he was averaging like 2 points per game at Rice. And so what does that tell you? I know what it tells me. It's hard to find a backup big man in the transfer portal, because you are having to sell. There is going to be a realistic limit on your minutes, and not a lot of guys are willing to do that or wanting to do that. And a lot of guys want to, as much as money is a driving force and probably the biggest driving force in the portal, playing time is a huge driving force still, right? Like, so Kansas could, and that's the other thing, Kansas doesn't want to have to offer a huge sum. They want to use some of their NIL money to bring in, a star player or whatever it is. But that's kind of a tough thing for players. Like, and maybe the longer we are in the portal, some players are going to have to realize, okay, there's no more starting center spots available. Like, I guess I will make good money at Kansas and be the backup center. You know what I mean? But point being, like, I wouldn't have a problem with this ad at all. Low ego player, that's good to have at the end of your bench, gives you more physicality, gives you insurance in case Tiller can't be fully healthy. Like I said, it wouldn't be fully comfortable if he's the 8th man in your rotation. I would like it to be a little bit better than that, but in an ideal world, Tiller can give you some sort of minutes there, and Suemnick is there for caution, for safety in case both of those don't happen, and is a good teammate and can play spot minutes here or there. And if anybody's in foul trouble, you can play him here and there, and he can still give you some backup minutes and give you good practice looks and stuff like that. And I would like the ad, because you do have to fill out the roster somehow. And again, like, there's not the option to go out and get somebody who was averaging 15 and 10 at a smaller school to come in and be like, yeah, but you're going to play 12 minutes per game at Kansas. That's not really there. And so you have to be a little bit, more loose with your selections here. And I think Suemnick would be interesting. What would be beyond interesting is that they posted some photos from the visit, and he was wearing a number 88 jersey. Now, what they wear on those visits isn't always indicative of like what they would end up wearing. In fact, I think Darren Peterson, is he going to be wearing 22 for Kansas? I think Dame Sarr, who just had his visit with Kansas, was in a 22 jersey. Somebody else, one of the other transfers for KU, maybe it was Jaden Dawson, I don't remember, was wearing a 22. So like, it just felt like the 22 has been the default. But 88, that would certainly be interesting. I know for a fact he'd be the first 88 in Kansas basketball history, because they didn't start allowing the numbers above 55 till very recently. But I just think that'd be very interesting. All right, latest other portal news. Just mentioned Dame Sarr visiting as well for KU. We'll get to all that and more. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. All-in-one convenience with Monarch Money allows you to, instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks, and we'll have any, portal breaking news over the weekend if it so happens. Feels like we've been dry on breaking news. We had the occasional rumor, that little piece of bait that might catch you along, but no big fish catch yet. Maybe this weekend is the one that it happens. And Sarr visiting Kansas. So they had Suemnick visiting, Sarr visiting Kansas starting Wednesday, according to Eric Bossy and 24/7 Sports. And took some pictures rocking the KU uniform. That'd be exciting if you picked KU. We did our Sarr deep dive. Thank you to Everydayers if you already caught it. And, he's a very interesting player, that's for sure. Also, KU offered, this was out on social media today, a junior college player, Wes Ball, which I guess, meant to play sports with that last name. He is a 6'8", 215-pound, I guess you would call him a power forward from, I don't know, maybe he would be a center, from Pima Community College. That's a JUCO, very good JUCO. They were 35-1 this past season. They finished third in the country. They have a third place game at the JUCO ranks. Good numbers, almost 13 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 62% from the floor. So what I find interesting there with Wes Ball is going back to the idea if you have 4 scholarships, right? You want one more stud player, maybe you want a developmental player, you want another backup big, and then what do you do with the 4th spot? Do you get a Davey Coit role player, or do you get another big man to have even more depth there in conjunction with the Suemnick stuff? Would Wes Ball be the answer to that, where you'd have 2 of them? Or is that an indication that Kansas doesn't feel great? Like they don't know if Suemnick's going to pick them or not. Maybe Suemnick does pick them, right? But did they make that offer as a backup plan to Suemnick in case, because similar size, 6'8", 215, 6'8", 225, Suemnick a little beefier there, but is this maybe a backup plan to that, or is it in conjunction? I think that would be kind of interesting. Another name maybe possibly to watch, according to Trilly Donovan, is Declan Duru of Real Madrid, athletic 4-man, 18 years old. Kind of same idea of Sarr, bringing somebody over from the international route, so that'd be interesting. And then the last one here is Malik Thomas, who I haven't seen any KU interest to this point, but he got granted officially another year of eligibility. I guess Virginia is like the heavy favorite right now. But let's say the Sarr thing doesn't happen, or let's say Darian Williams, you think he's going to stay in the draft, or whatever it is, right? Malik Thomas might make some sense. 6'5", 205. He's not a wing that you would want playing the 4, because I would have questions about the rebounding and the defense. But if you're just talking bringing on a wing who can be a scorer and a shooter, 20 points per game at San Francisco. Before that, he was at USC. He shot 39.4% from 3 on 5.3 attempts per game, 85% from the foul line on 6.5 attempts per game. So he gets the free throw line, 89th percentile free throw attempt rate. He shoots threes at a high rate, and he makes threes at a high rate. He shot 43% on above the break threes as well, which was in the 93rd percentile. So he would be somebody who, again, like I'm still, looking at Sarr and Williams and Lewis and those guys, right? But I don't know. To me, it would make sense for Kansas to at least reach out and have some sort of interest that if you do get further down the line, maybe he does make sense a little bit further on. The last piece of news here, KU baseball. We'll see if they can get back at it on Friday and Saturday, because they fell to BYU. Almost had another comeback, but just fell a little bit short in the end. They did beat Missouri in a midweek game, which is obviously important. Beat your rival, one on the road, stuff like that. But now 4 straight losses in Big 12 play for KU baseball. I'm sure they'll be fine, and hopefully they turn it around and get hot at the right time, which is kind of coming up here toward the end of the regular season. But yeah, they need to stop the skid in Big 12 play. So a couple with BYU, they've obviously still got that big series at West Virginia coming up at the end of the regular season, Big 12 tournament coming up after that. But I still feel good that they'll be a tournament team and stuff like that. But you do start need to start seeing some more W's back in the win column as opposed to how these past 4 games have gone. But, they've shaken, they shook off the 3-game sweep they had to TCU very well right after that. And we'll see if they can respond again to these 4 straight Big 12 losses. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll be back at you if there's any breaking news over the weekend. If not, coming at you on Monday with some more transfer portal talk right here with LOJ.